Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Do you realize how close we are to the end? I am going to lecture briefly today on Chapter 15 as we continue our way through the neurological system. Chapter 15 is named the autonomic, not automatic, but autonomic nervous system, and we'll also briefly discuss visceral reflexes. Section 15.1 is the very general information. Oh, by the way, hope you have printed off the study guide as well as the figures and tables that I asked you to. Okay, 15.1. Definition. I'm going to read it here. The autonomic nervous system can be defined as the nervous system that controls glands, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. It is also sometimes called the visceral motor system to distinguish it from the somatic motor system that controls the skeletal muscles. The primary target organs of the autonomic nervous system are the viscera of the thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavities, and a few other structures such as cutaneous blood vessels and sweat glands. So, the autonomic nervous system, again, very briefly, controls the heart to some extent, the kidneys, the stomach, the intestines, etc., etc. Things that we do not have any voluntary control of. Also, let me define the visceral reflexes that are included in this chapter. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for the body's visceral reflexes. These are unconscious, automatic, stereotyped responses to stimulation. Now, there is an excellent figure at 15.1 on page 559 that shows a general autonomic visceral reflex. This one happens to involve the heart rate and blood pressure. This is how any visceral reflex functions. There has to be some sort of a receptor, and this is a nerve ending that can detect stretch, tissue damage, blood chemicals, body temperature, and other internal stimuli. In this case, with the heart, it's detecting heart rate and blood pressure. And there also has to be an integrating nerve or an integrating center in the central nervous system, afferent neurons that take the messages to this integrating system, and then efferent neurons that carry motor signals away from the central nervous system and to the actual effector that carries out the end response. It's a whole lot easier to just look at the picture there, figure 15.1, and try to read through it. There are two major divisions of the autonomic nervous system, and you have probably heard these terms already. These two are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic system adapts the body for increased physical activity. Such things as the flight or fight response that I'm sure you've also already heard of also. It increases alertness of the body, increases heart rate, blood pressure, pulmonary airflow, such things as that. The parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system, by comparison, has a more calming effect on body functions. It is associated with reducing energy expenditure and normal body maintenance. It is sometimes called the resting and digesting part of the nervous system. Now, these two divisions do not work only one at a time. They are both in effect working at all times, but there is an overall balance that has to be achieved. They exhibit, both, as I said, have a background rate of activity, but this balance then shifts the overall activity one way or the other, depending on the body's nerves, or depending on, the body's needs. Okay, look at figure 15, or section 15.2, anatomy of the autonomic nervous system. If you look at figure 15.3 on the bottom of page 561, you will see a drawing showing the sympathetic chain ganglia. The sympathetic division of the autonomic system is also called the thoracolumbar division because it arises from the thoracic and the lumbar regions of the spinal cord. The axons that leave the spinal cord there go to ganglia in the sympathetic chain. And the figure 15.3 shows some of these ganglia. Figure 15.4 and 15.5 show more sketches of the sympathetic nervous system. 15.4 also shows very easily the different organs that the sympathetic system innervates and the responses that it can get. Okay, good thing to look at those figures before your test. Now, on page 565 is the beginning of the discussion of the parasympathetic nervous system. It is shown, always on the next page, in figure 15.7 on page 566. This is a schematic of the parasympathetic nervous system. You can see that it arises almost exclusively from cranial nerves and nerves of the pelvic or of the lumbar and sacral areas of the spinal cord. Okay? One more nervous system, if you will, that I want you to know a little bit about, and that is called the enteric nervous system. Your author says the following very clearly. The digestive tract has a nervous system of its own called the enteric nervous system. This does not derive or arise from the brain stem or the spinal cord, but it does, like the autonomic system, innervate smooth muscle and glands. The enteric nervous system is found in the walls of the esophagus, the stomach, and the intestines, and the organs that secrete enzymes and acid that help in digestion. That's about all we'll say about that. Section 15.3 briefly talks about the autonomic effects on target organs, lists them very succinctly. First, however, it talks about the neurotransmitters that are involved in the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers secrete different types of neurotransmitters. All autonomic nerve fibers secrete either acetylcholine or norepinephrine. And each of these two different neurotransmitters affects two different classes of receptors in different organs. For example, in the acetylcholine system, there are muscarinic receptors, those that are stimulated or could be stimulated by muscarine, which is a chemical found in mushroom toxin, and nicotinic receptors that are actually, it's another botanical toxin found in nicotine. Now, acetylcholine can bind to either and both of these type receptors, but each of the different receptors causes different effects. And there, if you read very carefully in the short outline at the bottom of 568 and 9, you will see some of the effects of the acetylcholine. Further on page 569 is a discussion of norepinephrine. It has two types of receptors also. The alpha adrenergic receptor, that is excitatory, and beta adrenergic receptors that are usually inhibitory. So try to have some of that in your mind just before your test. Or if you, even better, if you have a photographic memory, just stare enough at table 15.5 on page 570, and you will know everything you need to know about the autonomic nervous system. It has target organ, target cells, the sympathetic nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system. As I mentioned, there are dual innervations of almost all of these target organs. That's because there's a constant balance going on between between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. Okay, that is briefly, very briefly, chapter 15. If you go through the figures and tables, read through the chapter again quickly and easily, listen to my lecture, you'll do wonderfully well on the test. Thank you very much.